There are places on Earth where nature appears to have lost its temper entirely, flinging fire, poison and salt across the landscape, as if in a final act of rebellion against life itself. The Danakil Desert is one such place. A seething cauldron on the border of Ethiopia and Eritrea, where the sun feels less like a distant star and more like a personal adversary, hovering directly overhead with a glare that can peel the skin off rocks. Temperatures here scoff at the human concept of comfort, regularly soaring beyond 50 degrees Celsius, high enough to make a thermometer sweat and a frying pan out of the ground. In this merciless heat, even shadows retreat, leaving everything exposed under the brutal reign of an unrelenting sun. As you step into the Danakil, it does not welcome you. It dares you. The air itself feels heavier, thick with the scent of sulfur and scorched earth, as if the very breath of the planet has gone sour. Volcanic craters scar the terrain, their jagged rims belching acrid gases, while rivers of lava, still faintly glowing beneath blackened crusts, snake their way through a tapestry of chaos. You do not merely visit Danakil, you endure it. Every step feels like trespassing on forbidden ground. A place where the Earth's crust is stretched so thin you can almost hear it groaning beneath your feet. The landscape is an artist's nightmare and a geologist's fever dream. Acid pools gleam in impossible colors, toxic yellows, sickly greens and rusty oranges, like the palettes of some mad chemist. Steam hisses from cracks in the crust, whispering ancient secrets and issuing dire warnings. It's as if the planet itself has been flayed open, exposing its raw, burning nerves to the sky. These acidic springs can dissolve flesh with terrifying efficiency, turning the smallest misstep into a fatal lesson in humility. Here, water is a paradox, either deadly to drink or so scarce it feels like a cruel joke. But the most surreal sight, perhaps, is the blinding expanse of salt flats. Stretching to the horizon in every direction, they shimmer under the punishing sun like a frozen sea from a hallucination. This is the ghost of an ancient ocean, long since evaporated, leaving behind a crust of salt so thick it crunches underfoot. It gleams brilliantly, reflecting the sunlight in a way that would be beautiful if it weren't so viciously disorienting. Travelers have been known to lose their way in this bleached labyrinth, swallowed whole by the endless white until they become little more than a cautionary tale whispered by the wind. Danakil is not simply inhospitable, it is openly hostile. Scientists often refer to it as one of the closest analogues to the surface of Mars, but at least Mars has the decency to keep its temperature below the boiling point of water. Here, the heat does not just cook the land, it warps reality. Mirages dance and flicker on the horizon, taunting the weary with visions of non-existent lakes and shady groves. The ground itself becomes a trickster, its cracked surface hinting at solidity while concealing sinkholes filled with boiling mud or corrosive brine. And yet, impossibly, life persists. Perhaps the greatest marvel of the Danakil Desert is not its capacity for destruction, but its stubborn refusal to be entirely lifeless. Extremophiles, microscopic organisms that laugh in the face of acidity and thrive in boiling waters, make their homes in these toxic pools, their existence a defiant middle finger to conventional biology. These microbes feast on sulfur and iron, transforming their deadly environment into an ecosystem of resilience. It's life, Jim, but not as we know it. Even larger creatures against all odds eke out a living here. Salt-loving beetles scurry across the flats, their hardened exoskeletons shielding them from the blistering sun. Birds of prey circle overhead, their sharp eyes scanning for any flicker of movement amidst the glaring white. And human life, yes, even human life, has learned to adapt. The Afar people, among the toughest and most resourceful desert dwellers on Earth, have carved out an existence from the salt and fire. Their caravans, often led by patient camels, traverse the salt flats with stoic determination, harvesting slabs of salt that they call white gold, hauling them back to civilization in a tradition as ancient as the desert itself. Yet, even they respect the furnace. They know its moods, its silent threats, and its explosive tantrums. They have stories of spirits that haunt the salt plains, of mountains that belch fire without warning, of water that kills faster than thirst. In Danakil, survival is not just about endurance, it is about reverence. To live here is to bow to the unpredictable will of a land that brooks no arrogance. For the unprepared, Danakil is a death sentence written in salt and fire. Dehydration creeps in faster than fear, and exhaustion becomes an inevitable companion. With every drop of sweat lost, the body inches closer to collapse, as if the desert is slowly reclaiming what it sees as rightfully its own. Electronics fail, tires melt, and metal tools become too hot to touch. Even technology, in all its modern glory, finds itself humbled by the primeval fury of this place. Still, there's an eerie beauty in the brutality. Sunrise paints the sky with violent streaks of crimson and gold, as if the heavens themselves are ablaze. At dusk, the landscape softens momentarily, bathed in the glow of molten lava beneath a sky smeared with the colors of fire and ash. For a fleeting moment, Danakil stops growling and starts purring, like a beast briefly sated but never tamed. What makes Danakil truly terrifying and undeniably captivating is not just its hostility, but its unpredictability. Beneath your feet, tectonic plates are slowly pulling apart, creating new rifts in the Earth's crust at a rate faster than almost anywhere else on the planet. Volcanic eruptions are not a question of if, but when. Gas emissions fluctuate without warning, and acid pools can shift overnight. In this living laboratory of geological violence, change is the only constant, and survival hinges on a delicate dance with disaster. So, welcome to the furnace. Welcome to the jagged edge of existence, where life has been stripped to its barest essentials and still finds a way to endure. Welcome to the Danakil Desert, Earth's deadliest corner, where the rules of survival are rewritten every single day, and where predators and prey alike are locked in a relentless game against the planet itself. In this place, there are no guarantees, no safe harbors, and no second chances. There is only the unyielding question posed by the desert: are you strong enough to survive me? In the Danakil Desert, fire does not hide in the underworld. It proudly flaunts itself on the surface, like a mischievous child refusing to stay indoors. Here, volcanoes don't merely exist as distant slumbering giants. No, they are restless beasts, growling beneath the surface and occasionally baring their fangs in violent displays of molten fury. The very bedrock beneath your feet feels unstable, a fragile crust stretched tight over a belly full of liquid fire. Every fissure and crack breathes the hot breath of the earth, as if the planet itself is exhaling its molten soul into the open air. This is not a place where life waits for the fire to die down before it dares to exist. Life, ever stubborn, has learned to dance with the flames. Along the smoldering slopes of these volatile mountains, nature has built a peculiar and savage theater. Here, predators do not just stalk prey. They use the land itself as a co-conspirator. The rocky labyrinths formed by ancient lava flows create perfect choke points and natural traps. Prey animals, desperate to avoid the exposed dangers of open plains, find themselves funneled into these rugged corridors, unaware that sharp eyes and sharper claws wait in the shadows. Scavengers thrive in these volcanic shadowlands, their fortunes rising and falling with the rhythm of eruptions. The occasional explosive temper tantrum of the volcano drives fleeing animals into treacherous paths where opportunistic hunters lie in ambush. Raptors with wings spread wide circle lazily above the steaming vents, their keen eyes sharp enough to spot the twitch of a panicked lizard or the shuffle of a rodent seeking refuge beneath a rock. Carrion birds with their grim patience perch on the jagged spires of cooled magma, knowing that fire-fed chaos often leaves behind a feast of the unfortunate. Even the predators themselves are not immune to the volcano's ruthless temperament. The heat alone is enough to test the mettle of any living creature. Yet, remarkably, many have mastered the brutal rhythm of this environment. Desert foxes, with their oversized ears acting like built-in air conditioners, patrol the volcanic outskirts under the baking sun. Their pale fur deflects heat, while their nocturnal habits allow them to hunt under the comparatively forgiving cloak of night. In this place, adaptation is not optional. It is the price of admission. But if you want to witness survival at its most extreme, you must look beyond the obvious hunters and scavengers. Peer closer, into the bubbling cauldrons of acidic water and scalding mud, and you will discover life forms that defy every natural expectation. These are not beasts of claw and fang, but microbial predators, invisible to the naked eye yet ferocious in their microscopic wars. Known as extremophiles, they flourish where no sensible organism would dare linger. In water that sizzles at temperatures approaching boiling point, they glide effortlessly, their cellular machinery specially designed to withstand acid baths and thermal shocks that would obliterate most known life forms. It is within these toxic pools that a secret kingdom thrives. Archaea, bacteria, and other single-celled pioneers feast upon sulfur and iron, converting these lethal elements into energy with an ingenuity that would make any chemist envious. They are the apex predators of their scalding realms, hunting rival microbes in a slow-motion struggle that has played out for millennia. Picture, if you will, a microscopic lion stalking a zebra, only here, the lion is a thermophilic bacterium, and the zebra is an unwitting single-celled wanderer, doomed to be engulfed and digested in a chemical inferno. These microbial gladiators are not just surviving, they are rewriting the rules of life. They tolerate acidity so intense it could strip paint from metal, and temperatures that would boil the blood of larger creatures in seconds. Their existence raises profound questions about the boundaries of biology, challenging our understanding of where life can take hold. It is no wonder that scientists study these extremophiles with such fervor, for they may hold clues to the earliest forms of life on Earth, and perhaps even life beyond our planet. If life can flourish in the devilish cauldrons of Danakil, who is to say it cannot survive in the sulfuric clouds of Venus or the icy geysers of Europa? Back in the visible world of tooth and talon, the volcanic landscapes continue their relentless work as nature's architects of danger. Gas vents, often masked by the deceptive beauty of mineral-rich crusts, exhale toxic plumes capable of suffocating unwary creatures. The ground itself, brittle and treacherous, can collapse beneath the weight of an unsuspecting step, plunging the unfortunate into pits of scalding death. Yet amid these lethal pitfalls, life has found remarkable loopholes. Take, for example, the resilient beetles that scuttle across the volcanic plains. These hardy insects sport armor-like exoskeletons that reflect sunlight and insulate against the oppressive heat radiating from the ground. With an almost mechanical precision, they patrol the scorched earth, scavenging for anything remotely edible. The charred remains of plants, the desiccated husks of other insects, or the wind-blown crumbs of larger animals' kills. To them, the volcano is not an enemy but a reluctant ally, providing both nourishment and a relative haven from less heat-tolerant predators. Then there are the desert reptiles, those cold-blooded denizens of fire, that bask on sun-baked stones until their bodies reach the optimal temperature for a lightning-fast strike. Lizards, their scales shimmering like molten metal, dart between rocks with uncanny agility, snatching up insects or smaller reptiles before vanishing back into their volcanic hideaways. Their speed is not just an advantage but a necessity. In this land, hesitation is a death sentence. The fiery landscapes of Danakil are not merely backdrops to survival stories, they are active participants in the drama. The volcanoes set the stage, but they also play the villain and the unexpected benefactor. Eruptions scatter ash that eventually enriches the soil, fostering microscopic life that feeds the ecosystem from the ground up. Heat vents create microhabitats where certain species thrive, shielded from the broader harshness of the desert. In this twisted paradox, destruction and creation are inseparable dance partners. What Danakil teaches, in all its ferocious splendor, is that life is not just persistent, it is opportunistic, adaptable, and astonishingly brave. Predators here are not just creatures of flesh and blood. They are forms of life that wage chemical warfare, that play geological roulette, and that outwit their volatile environment at every turn. They remind us that survival is not a static state but an active daily conquest, fought with every heartbeat and every breath drawn from the sulphurous air. As the sun lowers, casting long, smoldering shadows over the volcanic ridges, the desert does not cool so much as it smolders in quiet defiance. The predators of fire retreat to their lairs, while nocturnal hunters prepare to take their place in this ongoing saga of survival. The volcanoes, meanwhile, remain ever watchful, their simmering fury a constant reminder that in Danakil, fire is not merely a hazard, it is the heartbeat of the land. And for those who call this inferno home, every day is both a challenge and a triumph, a relentless test of resilience played out on nature's most treacherous stage. If you thought the volcanoes were harsh, welcome to the next cruel twist in nature's game, the salt flats of the Danakil Desert, a place where the earth itself seems to have been skinned, bleached, and left to dry under the unforgiving sun. This is not merely a landscape, it is a blinding ocean of white, a searing plain where the horizon dissolves into heat haze and where footsteps echo like whispers against the vast emptiness. At first glance it seems lifeless, a sterile arena of cracked salt crusts and scorching glare, but linger a moment longer and you'll sense the quiet tension beneath the surface. The salt flats are not empty. They are alive with an invisible war, an unending battle where predators stalk prey across a battlefield carved from the bones of an ancient sea. Long ago, these flats were part of a colossal inland ocean, a place teeming with marine life. Time, climate, and the unrelenting sun conspired to drain that sea dry, leaving behind layer upon layer of crystalline salt, so thick that it crunches and snaps beneath your feet like brittle glass. Today, what remains is a blinding expanse that mirrors the sky in such a surreal way that it feels like you are walking through the heavens themselves. Only, in this heaven the gates are closed, and survival is rationed out by the pinch. For the salt miners, these flats are a source of life-sustaining income, carved by hand in a labor that is as ancient as it is backbreaking. But they are not the only harvesters of this shimmering wasteland. There are hunters here too, far more silent, far more sinister, and far better adapted to this merciless domain. Under the relentless gaze of the sun, life on the salt flats moves with deliberate precision. Nothing wastes energy here, for every motion costs precious moisture, and every moment of exposure invites death by desiccation. The predators of these flats have learned that patience is their greatest weapon. Take the salt flat beetles, for example. Diminutive warriors encased in armor-like exoskeletons, their bodies coated in waxy layers that deflect both heat and salt alike. They scuttle across the surface like miniature tanks, relentless and unyielding. Their legs are long and spindly, keeping their bodies lifted away from the scorched ground as they patrol for unsuspecting prey. The larvae of flies, the carcasses of other insects, or the rare sun-dazed intruder too slow to escape their questing mandibles. These beetles are not scavengers of convenience. They are opportunistic predators, willing to stalk and ambush smaller arthropods with a tenacity that borders on obsession. When prey is scarce, and it often is in this barren theater, they turn cannibal, feasting on their own kind to fuel the harsh days ahead. The salt for them is both friend and foe. It preserves their kills like nature's own refrigerator, yet it also threatens to desiccate them alive if they linger too long in the open. So they scurry from shadow to shadow, beneath the scant shelters provided by salt ridges and the wind-carved remnants of crusted-over pools, navigating a labyrinth where death lurks in every grain. Overhead, the skies are ruled by avian monarchs who have turned the salt flats into their personal banquet hall. Step into the domain of the Egyptian vulture, and you witness a predator that has mastered both patience and brutality. With wings stretched wide, they soar in lazy circles, their keen eyesight scanning the shimmering expanse below for the slightest hint of movement. To the casual observer, these birds may seem like distant spectators to the salt flats struggles, but make no mistake, they are executioners waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Spotting a weakened lizard, an injured bird, or a carrion opportunity left behind by the desert's harsher judgments, they descend with lethal precision, turning stillness into a sudden burst of violence. Then there are the sand lizards, reptilian gladiators draped in scales that reflect sunlight like polished armor. These cold-blooded hunters have mastered the art of thermal camouflage, adjusting their body temperature to blend seamlessly with their blistering surroundings. They move with deceptive sluggishness, conserving energy until the exact moment when a darting insect crosses their path. In an instant, they explode into action, jaws snapping shut with a predatory efficiency honed by millennia of evolutionary trial and error. Their diet is a grim catalogue of desert survivors, beetles, ants, even the occasional small bird that dares to rest upon the salt flats too long. In this arena, even the resting becomes a risk. The battlefield of salt is not merely a backdrop for these encounters, it is an active participant. The blinding glare obscures predators from their prey, creating perfect conditions for ambush. The crunching of salt beneath a careless step betrays movement, alerting hunters to potential opportunities. Wind whips across the flats, sculpting natural choke points where desperate prey can be cornered and overwhelmed. This is not passive scenery. This is a living, shifting chessboard where each grain of salt plays a role in the high-stakes game of survival. Among the most fascinating players in this drama are the salt-loving microorganisms that coat the surface of the flats like an invisible army. Halophiles, as they are called, thrive in conditions that would kill most other life forms in seconds. These microscopic warriors do not merely endure the salt, they crave it, relying on its presence to maintain their internal balance and power their biological functions. Though invisible to the naked eye, they form the very foundation of the salt flat ecosystem, transforming sunlight and minerals into life-sustaining energy that trickles up the food chain. In a place where giants falter, it is these tiny creatures that quietly sustain the larger predators above. Of course, the human hunters of salt The Afar people also move across this landscape with an understanding as ancient as the desert itself. They carve great slabs of salt from the crust, stacking them upon camel caravans that will carry these glistening burdens across the hostile expanse to distant markets. Yet even these hardy salt miners are not above the fray of predator and prey. The vultures, keen to snatch a morsel from an unguarded pack, follow their journeys like spectral shadows. The heat itself seems to prey upon them, sucking the moisture from their bodies as they labor beneath a merciless sun. But they endure, for in Danakil, survival is both necessity and tradition. As the day wanes and the angle of the sun dips lower, the salt flats briefly transform. The harsh white glare softens into hues of gold and amber, as if the desert is offering a fleeting apology for its earlier savagery. Shadows lengthen, providing momentary respite for the hunters and the hunted alike. But the tension never truly dissipates. Here in this glittering wasteland, the struggle for survival is eternal, a cycle without end, etched into the salt and baked into the bones of every creature that dares to call it home. The predators of the salt flats are not the grand beasts of legend. They are smaller, swifter, and infinitely more tenacious. They have mastered a battlefield where the terrain itself is as much an adversary as any rival hunter. In this shimmering expanse, salt is not a mere mineral. It is the very currency of life and death. It preserves, it deceives, it punishes, and it rewards. And above all, it ensures that the Danakil Desert remains one of the fiercest and most fascinating stages for nature's oldest story. The relentless, unyielding fight to survive. Above the searing plains of the Danakil Desert, there is another battlefield, one invisible to the creatures scurrying across the crusted salt below, yet no less brutal in its relentless contest of life and death. Here, in the boundless ocean of air shimmering beneath the sun's oppressive glare, predators reign with an elegance that defies the violence of their purpose. Raptors, hawks, falcons, and eagles carve invisible paths through the sky, their wings slicing cleanly through currents of rising heat. Masters of the scorching heavens, they survey a kingdom that stretches from the molten earth to the blazing vault above, ruling not from thrones, but from thermals and updrafts that carry them in effortless dominion. The Danakil sky, harsh and unyielding, presents no place to hide. Clouds are a rarity, a fleeting mercy quickly burned away by the sun's impatient gaze. The horizon trembles under the weight of the heat, and the air itself quivers in defiance of visibility. For creatures bound to the land, this distortion is disorienting, turning the familiar into mirage and tricking the senses with false promises of shade and water. But for the raptors, this shimmering veil is no obstacle. It is an advantage, a natural camouflage that both conceals their lethal approach and magnifies their already formidable vision. Evolution has blessed these aerial hunters with eyesight so keen that it borders on the supernatural. Where a human might squint helplessly against the blinding reflection of sun off salt, the raptor's eyes slice through the glare with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. Tiny movements, the flick of a lizard's tail, the nervous twitch of a beetle, are betrayed in stark detail even from heights that seem unfathomable. Their eyes, packed with light-sensitive cells and equipped with dual focal points, act like living telescopes, scanning the blinding canvas below for the slightest sign of life. But spotting prey is only the opening act in this high-stakes aerial ballet. The true artistry of the raptor lies in the hunt itself, in the measured calculation of speed and angle, of wind direction and thermal lift. The sun-scorched air, rising in powerful currents from the baking ground, becomes both ally and adversary. Thermals allow these birds to soar without expending precious energy, to cruise the vast desert kingdom on invisible highways of heat. Yet they also buffet and twist with mischievous unpredictability, demanding constant adjustments of wing and tail to maintain the perfect trajectory. Among these sky warriors, the lanner falcon commands particular respect. Sleek and swift, it streaks across the heavens like a bolt of living lightning, its streamlined body built for speed and maneuverability. When it locks onto its target, perhaps a hapless pigeon, disoriented by the heat, or a desert finch daring to cross the open flats, it tucks its wings and dives in a stoop of breathtaking velocity. Gravity becomes its accomplice, hurtling the falcon earthward at speeds exceeding 150 kilometers per hour. The impact, when it strikes, is nothing short of devastating. A collision of precision and power honed by millions of years of evolutionary warfare. The hawks of Danakil, meanwhile, are creatures of opportunism and patience. Rather than relying on sheer speed, They exploit the desert's natural choke points, rocky outcrops, gullies carved by ancient floods, and the isolated trees that dot the arid landscape like stubborn sentinels. Perched motionless in these vantage points, they wait for their quarry to blunder into range. A moment's hesitation, a misjudged sprint across open ground, and the hawk unfurls its wings in a silent burst of motion, descending upon its prey with ruthless efficiency. Then there are the eagles, the undisputed monarchs of the sky. Larger and heavier than their raptor cousins, they ride the desert thermals with regal poise, surveying their dominion with an almost arrogant majesty. Eagles are not creatures of haste. They are strategists, selecting their targets with deliberate calculation. Young gazelles straying too far from the herd, jackals weakened by the relentless sun, even the occasional juvenile vulture foolish enough to test the boundaries of the eagle's reign, all fall within the eagle's formidable menu. Their talons, sharp as daggers and strong enough to crush bone, are weapons of terrifying finality. The air battles fought in the Danakil sky are as dramatic as any clash upon the ground. Falcons intercept rival hunters in breathtaking displays of aerial combat, banking and weaving in complex patterns as they vie for supremacy over prized hunting territories. Eagles, their wings casting shadows large enough to momentarily darken patches of land, engage in mid-air grappling matches, locking talons and spiraling downward in a dangerous contest of strength and endurance. Even vultures, those oft-maligned scavengers, are not above defending a promising carcass from would-be usurpers, fending off challengers with aggressive lunges and raking beaks. Yet for all their mastery of the sky, these raptors are not immune to the desert's brutal trials. The searing heat tests the limits of even their remarkable physiology. Prolonged flights in the oven-hot atmosphere force their bodies to the brink of overheating, compelling them to seek refuge in rare patches of shade or to soar ever higher in search of cooler altitudes. Water, the precious elixir of life, is scarce in the extreme, and many raptors must subsist almost entirely on the moisture gleaned from their prey. In Danakil, every drop counts. Every shred of sustenance wrested from the desert's stubborn grip through relentless determination. The challenges of raising young in such an unforgiving environment further underscore the resilience of these feathered predators. Nests are built precariously on rocky cliffs and spindly trees, exposed to the elements and to the ever-present threat of predation by opportunistic scavengers. Parents alternate between the arduous tasks of hunting and guarding their vulnerable offspring, their sharp cries piercing the desert silence as they ward off intruders. Fledglings, once hatched, face a harsh baptism under the desert sun, their survival hinging on their ability to master the art of flight before thirst and hunger claim them. Despite these hardships, the raptors of Danakil endure. More than that, they thrive, embodying the fierce spirit of a land that rewards strength, skill, and adaptability above all else. They are living symbols of the desert's unforgiving beauty, creatures that soar above a world of fire and salt, their lives etched into the searing sky like fleeting brushstrokes on a burning canvas. As dusk approaches, casting long, smoldering shadows over the salt flats and volcanic ridges, the raptors begin to descend from their aerial thrones. The thermals that carried them so effortlessly during the day subside, and the sky, once a theater of relentless action, softens into a tranquil expanse, tinged with the fading gold of sunset. But make no mistake, beneath this temporary calm lies a perpetual readiness, for in Danakil the hunt never truly ends. Night may grant the prey a brief reprieve, but dawn will come again, and with it the raptors will rise once more, sovereigns of the scorching sky, to continue their unending dance of survival. As the sun begins its slow, reluctant retreat behind the scorched horizon of the Danakil Desert, a strange transformation unfolds across the blistered landscape. The oppressive glare that ruled the day softens into a haze of molten gold and copper, and for a fleeting moment, the desert seems to hold its breath. Shadows lengthen, the wind cools by the slightest fraction, and life that had hidden in burrows and crevices throughout the sun's merciless reign dares to emerge. Among the first to slip from the folds of twilight are the desert's most enigmatic tricksters, the pale, ghost-like foxes and the cunning, opportunistic jackals. With steps as light as whispers and senses honed to near supernatural sharpness, they take to the sands, inheritors of a kingdom defined by mirage and survival. To watch them is to glimpse the desert's secret rhythm, a performance practiced over countless generations of hardship and instinct. The ghost foxes, coated in fur as pale as moonlight, drift across the dunes like living phantoms. Their color is no accident of beauty. It is armor against the sun. This pallor reflects what little light lingers from the dying day, deflecting heat away from their fragile bodies and blending seamlessly with the salt-silvered earth beneath their pores. But color alone is not enough to survive here. The Danakil does not tolerate mere camouflage. It demands mastery of every element, every ounce of cunning. These foxes have evolved with ears that seem comically oversized, vast radar dishes perched atop their delicate skulls, twitching at the faintest stir of sound. To the untrained eye, they might appear exaggerated, even amusing. But there is genius in this design. Their ears are not only acoustic amplifiers, able to detect the stealthy shuffle of beetles beneath crusted soil, or the distant chirp of a desperate insect. They are also natural heat exchangers, radiating excess warmth away from the blood that flows so perilously close to the surface. It is as though the fox carries its own personal cooling system, an evolutionary triumph against the fury of the sun. But perhaps most impressive is the fox's strategy for timing. These creatures have learned to move in the in-between hours, when the furnace of the desert has cooled just enough to permit motion, but before the true predators of the night emerge from their deeper lairs. At twilight, the world belongs to them. The temperature drops marginally, casting the desert in a deceptive tranquility, and in this window of relative mercy, the foxes begin their silent hunt. They rely less on brute strength and more on precision, reading the dunes as a scholar reads ancient script, interpreting every shift of sand, every broken crust, every whispering trail as evidence of life hiding just beneath the surface. Their quarry is as varied as it is evasive. The luckless beetle trudging home too slowly after a day of scuttling, the dehydrated rodent darting from shadow to shadow, the occasional lizard lulled into false security by the cooling air. The fox does not rush its hunt. It moves with measured steps, conserving energy with every graceful bound, its delicate paws distributing its weight so evenly that it barely leaves a mark upon the shifting sands. When it strikes, it does so with breathtaking speed, jaws snapping shut around its target in a swift and merciless gesture that is less violence, more efficiency, honed to perfection by necessity. Not far from these spectral figures, another master of twilight patrols the edges of the salt flats and rocky outcrops. The jackal, scrappier and less graceful than its vulpine cousin, is nonetheless a formidable strategist in its own right. With a mottled coat that mirrors the desert's patchwork of stone and salt, the jackal thrives in the shadows between predator and scavenger, equally comfortable bringing down its own prey or liberating a meal from the misfortune of others. It is a creature of calculated risk, an opportunist that understands the precarious balance of energy in this hostile land. Jackals are exceptional problem solvers. Where the fox is a solitary spectre, the jackal can be a social tactician, sometimes working in pairs to outflank larger prey or to distract and deceive competing hunters. They employ a tactic of relentless harassment, nipping at the heels of wounded animals, shadowing vultures in hopes of pilfering a scrap, or boldly darting into the leftovers of a raptor's feast. Their tenacity is not born of greed, but of sheer survival instinct. In Danakil, no scrap of flesh is wasted, no opportunity overlooked. Like the foxes, jackals favor the hours when the desert exhales its heat and slips into cooler stillness. With their keen sense of smell, they detect carcasses from astonishing distances, led by invisible trails of scent carried on the dusk breeze. Their padded paws, built for endurance, allow them to travel vast expanses of barren ground without succumbing to the brutal abrasions of salt and stone. When water is all but non-existent, jackals glean moisture from the blood of their prey, an adaptation as grim as it is ingenious. Yet, life in the Danakil does not allow for complacency, even among such masterful survivors. The challenges faced by these cunning carnivores extend beyond mere hunting. Heat waves can push even these desert specialists to their limits, forcing them to retreat to the shade of rock overhangs or shallow burrows scraped into cooler ground. Dust storms, sudden and ferocious, can strip visibility to mere inches, blinding predator and prey alike in a maelstrom of grit. Even their own success is shadowed by danger, for the smell of a fresh kill can summon larger, more dangerous competitors, turning hunter into hunted in a heartbeat. The desert foxes and jackals, however, have long since learned that survival is a game of wits, not bravado. They are creatures that understand the art of living small in a world that demands grand struggles. Every hunt is calculated, every move economical, every risk carefully weighed against potential reward. They are the quiet tacticians of the Danakil, weaving through the mirages and illusions of the salt-crusted wastelands with an elegance that belies the brutal necessities of their existence. As night finally descends, cloaking the desert in velvet black, the foxes and jackals retreat once more into their secret refuges. Their bellies may not always be full, but their cunning has bought them another day in this relentless arena. The desert, in turn, resets its eternal stage, ready to challenge them anew with the rise of the sun. In this harsh and hauntingly beautiful land, the pale foxes and cunning jackals remain as enduring symbols of adaptability and wit, living proof that even in the most unforgiving corners of the planet, life, when armed with intelligence and stealth, finds a way to prevail. When the sun finally surrenders its tyrannical hold over the Danakil Desert, dipping below the jagged horizon and taking its furnace-like fury with it, the land does not fall into silence. It awakens into a different kind of life. The oppressive white heat that bleaches the salt flats by day gives way to a darker, subtler energy. The desert breathes a shallow sigh of relief as temperatures plummet by dozens of degrees within mere hours, and in this fleeting coolness, an entirely new caste of hunters emerges from their shadowy sanctuaries. The daylight rulers, the eagles, the foxes, the jackals, retreat to their dens and nests, making way for the creatures of the abyss, those that thrive beneath the cloak of night. This is the hour of the scorpion, the spider, and the silent, creeping assassins of the dark. Their world is not ruled by sight, but by sensation, by vibrations in the sand, and whispers of movement carried on the faintest desert breeze. To the human eye, the desert at night may seem barren and still, a lifeless expanse frozen under a quilt of stars. Yet to the creatures of the night, it is a stage alive with opportunity, where every grain of sand conceals both risk and reward. The scorpions are perhaps the most emblematic of these twilight hunters, their curved stingers poised like question marks punctuating the mysteries of the nocturnal hunt. Under ultraviolet light, their exoskeletons glow with an eerie, unearthly luminescence, as if nature itself had marked them with a secret signature. But this is not a frivolous flourish of design. The chemical compounds in their armor, believed to act as a natural sunscreen during the harsh daylight hours, also serve as an unexpected beacon for scientists brave enough to study them by night. In their natural element, however, they blend seamlessly into the dusty palette of the desert floor, stealth made perfect by evolution. Scorpions are consummate strategists. They do not rush headlong into the hunt, for haste in the desert wastes precious energy. Instead, they employ patience, lying in ambush with their pincers spread wide, poised to snatch any unwary insect that blunders into their carefully chosen kill zone. They sense the tiniest vibrations in the sand, translating them into a mental map of movement. When the moment is right, they strike with mechanical precision, immobilizing their prey with crushing claws or delivering a potent dose of venom through their sinuous tail. Their venom, a complex cocktail of neurotoxins, is tailored not for mere defense, but for the swift subjugation of prey, ensuring minimal struggle and maximum efficiency in this energy-starved land. Sharing this lethal theater is a varied ensemble of spiders, from nimble ground hunters to the more patient architects of silken snares. In the Danakil Desert, webs are rare luxuries, as the shifting sands make poor anchors for delicate structures. Here, spiders rely on stealth and speed rather than elaborate traps. Ground spiders skitter across the dunes under cover of darkness, their 8 legs moving with hypnotic rhythm as they stalk unsuspecting victims. They possess hairs so sensitive that they can detect the movement of air itself, allowing them to anticipate the approach of prey or predator with uncanny accuracy. Wolf spiders, in particular, are the prowlers of the Danakil night. With keen eyesight adapted for low-light conditions and an aggressive hunting style, they patrol their territories with restless energy. Unlike their web-weaving cousins, wolf spiders chase down their prey in relentless pursuits, pouncing with lethal force when the distance closes. Their preferred targets are the small insects that venture forth in the relative safety of nightfall, but they are opportunists at heart, willing to tackle larger prey when fortune favors their daring. Yet, the night's predatory ballet extends beyond the realms of arachnids. In the cool hours after sunset, other nocturnal hunters take to the sands, creatures whose adaptations to darkness rival even those of the most seasoned daylight predators. Small desert rodents, though often seen as prey, can flip the script under the cover of darkness, turning into bold scavengers and even hunters of insects and carrion. Desert hedgehogs emerge, their spiny armor a deterrent to would-be attackers as they snuffle through the dunes in search of beetles and larvae. But perhaps the most remarkable hunters of the Danakil night are the bats, the shadowy aerialists that flit silently through the cool desert air. As agile as any raptor and as precise as any arachnid, these mammals hunt by echolocation, emitting high-frequency calls that bounce off insects in flight, creating a sonic map of the night sky. In a place where visual cues are unreliable and the landscape offers few features for navigation, echolocation becomes a superpower, guiding them unerringly to swarms of moths and midges invisible to the naked eye. What unites all these nocturnal predators, from the scorpion to the bat, is their mastery of darkness as both ally and weapon. In the absence of light, the desert transforms into a realm of sensory warfare, where sight yields to sound, and movement becomes a game of life and death, played in near total silence. The predators exploit the vulnerability of creatures that, dulled by the day's exhaustion, fail to detect the creeping danger until it is too late. The cooling air of night also serves as a double-edged sword. While it grants respite from the oppressive daytime heat, it brings with it a new suite of challenges. Rapid temperature drops can sap the energy reserves of cold-blooded hunters, forcing them into brief periods of torpor until their internal engines rekindle. Moisture, fleeting and precious, condenses on the surface of stones and plants, offering brief opportunities for hydration and for ambush. Scorpions and spiders, well aware of these liquid oases, position themselves nearby, ready to capitalize on the gathering of thirsty insects. Predators of the dark must also contend with each other. The Danakil night is no sanctuary from competition. It is merely a shift change in the desert's endless contest. Spiders risk falling prey to scorpions, just as smaller scorpions risk becoming meals for their larger kin. Bats, though formidable in the air, remain vigilant against nocturnal raptors and opportunistic snakes that have slithered from their crevices to hunt along the rocky slopes. And yet, for all its dangers, the night is a time of calculated opportunity. Each hunter, tuned to the rhythms of the dark, knows that their survival hinges not on brute strength, but on finesse, timing, and the relentless honing of instinct. They are the heirs of an ancient lineage, each generation refining the art of nocturnal predation in a land that offers no margin for error. As dawn creeps reluctantly over the horizon, heralding the return of the sun's pitiless reign, the creatures of the night retreat to their hidden sanctuaries. They vanish beneath stones, burrow into the sand, or hang motionless in shadowed roosts, their nocturnal endeavors temporarily concluded. But the desert does not forget their presence. The tracks they leave behind in the cool sand are fleeting records of their nightly conquests, soon to be erased by the rising sun and the inexorable winds of the Danakil. Until darkness falls once more, they remain hidden, ghosts of the night, masters of the ambush, and silent architects of survival in Earth's deadliest corner. If the desert hunters of the Danakil seem savage and relentless, it is only because we have yet to peer beneath the surface of this brutal landscape. Beyond the reach of talons and teeth, beyond the scramble of beetles and the stoop of falcons, there exists another battlefield, a hidden war zone, invisible to the naked eye, yet far older and far more ruthless than anything played out beneath the blazing sun. Here, in the toxic pools and acid springs of Danakil, life wages its quiet microscopic war. It is a battlefield sculpted not by muscle and bone, but by molecules and chemical reactions. This is a war of invisibility, of stealth attacks and biochemical ambushes, where the predators have no eyes, no claws, no screams, only the relentless precision of chemical warfare. To the casual observer, these steaming, rainbow-streaked pools look like surreal works of abstract art, splashed carelessly across the tortured desert canvas. Neon yellows bleed into virulent greens. Brilliant oranges swirl beside crusty reds. A palette so unnatural it feels more like science fiction than reality. These vivid colors are no accident of mineral deposits alone. They are the very fingerprints of life, painted by microbial colonies locked in a ceaseless battle for survival. Here, in waters hot enough to poach an egg and acidic enough to dissolve bone, extremophiles flourish, thriving in conditions so hostile that they defy our very understanding of life's limitations. These extremophiles, a word that rolls off the tongue with appropriate drama, are not simply survivors. They are gladiators, born to thrive in the extreme. Among them are acidophiles, lovers of acidity so intense it would corrode metal; thermophiles, which bask in temperatures that would blister human skin in seconds, and halophiles, creatures that revel in salt concentrations so dense that conventional life forms would shrivel into dust within moments. These organisms have turned environmental poison into personal paradise, adapting molecular machinery to not just withstand, but embrace these lethal conditions. But this world is not some peaceful retreat for microbial eccentrics. Far from it. It is a ruthless arena of constant chemical combat, a microscopic version of an ancient battlefield where every breath, every movement, every molecular exchange could spell life or death. Here, predators do not chase prey across the landscape. Instead, they exude biochemical weapons, releasing enzymes and toxins that dissolve, digest, and dismantle neighboring organisms on a cellular level. These are assassins that operate in silence, slipping beneath the defenses of their rivals and reducing them to a slurry of nutrients to be absorbed and repurposed. In these pools, life operates under rules so different from the grand scale of foxes or eagles that it feels like stepping into a parallel universe. Microbial predators hunt not with speed or stealth, but with chemical precision. Picture an acid-loving bacterium slowly encroaching upon its hapless competitor, sensing the gradients of nutrients that seep from its prey's fragile membranes. The predator extends specialized appendages, molecular harpoons, if you will, and injects a lethal dose of enzymes that rupture the cell walls of its victim. The prey collapses into a shapeless mass, its carefully guarded contents spilling into the hostile water, where the victor eagerly absorbs the spoils. These invisible killers are not merely opportunistic feeders. Some engage in calculated, almost militaristic strategies of warfare. Certain bacteria form intricate biofilms, microscopic fortresses that protect entire colonies from the corrosive environment and the assaults of rival microbes. Within these fortified walls, chemical factories churn out defensive compounds and offensive enzymes, a perpetual arms race of evolutionary innovation. Others deploy toxins so potent that they can decimate neighboring colonies in moments, clearing valuable territory in a landscape where space is as fiercely contested as life itself. And yet, even within this molecular mayhem, alliances emerge, uneasy truces that tiptoe the line between mutualism and exploitation. Some extremophiles form cooperative networks, where waste products from one species become the lifeblood of another. Sulfur-eating microbes excrete sulfuric acid, which in turn fuels acid-loving bacteria that convert these byproducts into usable energy. It is an economy of survival, a barter system written not in trade agreements, but in strands of DNA and cascading chemical reactions. Cooperation here is never altruism. It is simply the most efficient path to individual gain. While these microbial wars rage unseen by the human eye, their impact ripples outward, shaping the broader ecosystem of the Danakil Desert in profound ways. The vivid crusts that rim the toxic pools, dazzling in their intensity, are monuments to ancient microbial victories, the accumulated remains of countless battles fought over centuries. These mineral deposits feed into the desert's nutrient cycles, subtly influencing the growth of hardy plant life along the fringes and attracting insects and scavengers in search of moisture and trace sustenance. For scientists peering through microscopes into this hidden realm, the pools of Danakil are more than an academic curiosity. They are living laboratories, windows into the origins of life itself. Many believe that early Earth may have resembled Danakil's boiling acidic pools, a world where primitive microbes waged chemical warfare long before the first fish flicked its tail or the first predator sharpened its claws. Studying these extremophiles may offer clues not only to our own beginnings, but to the possibility of life in equally inhospitable corners of the universe. If creatures can thrive in the searing acid baths of Danakil, why not in the sulfur clouds of Venus, or the icy subsurface oceans of distant moons? Yet, for all the wonder, there is undeniable menace in this microcosmic war. These microorganisms are reminders that nature's deadliest predators are not always the largest or the loudest. They are often the most adaptable, the most ruthless chemists in an endless game of survival. Their weapons are invisible, their victories silent, their conquests measured in micrometers and microseconds. But their influence is vast, shaping not only their own toxic kingdoms, but echoing through the desert's broader tapestry of life. As the sun rises once more over the Danakil Desert, its first rays gleaming off the crusted surfaces of the mineral pools, the microbial armies continue their unseen battles beneath the surface. No dawn breaks for them. There is no cycle of day and night in their ceaseless war. only the constant, grinding struggle for dominance, played out in realms too small for the eye to witness, yet too mighty to ignore. They are the hidden architects of life and death in Earth's deadliest corner, the invisible killers whose chemical warfare ensures that even in the most extreme environments, the ancient drama of predator and prey never ceases. In most corners of the world, water is life's gentle companion, a quiet presence, nourishing roots, slaking thirst, carving valleys with patient persistence. But here, in the blistered expanse of the Danakil Desert, water is something else entirely. It is not merely precious, it is a rare and dangerous obsession. It is the promise that keeps life moving, and the curse that lures it into the jaws of death. In this scorched kingdom of salt and fire, water is no passive oasis. It is the most cunning predator of all. Scattered across Danakil's furnace-like landscape, water appears in brief, deceptive fragments of mercy. A shimmering pool caught in a depression of rock, a trickle of moisture seeping through fractured earth, or a wind-scoured basin where ancient rains still linger in stubborn defiance. But these are not safe harbors. They are deadly magnets, gravitational wells of survival around which predator and prey are drawn with irresistible force. For any creature living in this land of extremes, thirst is not a daily nuisance. It is an existential crisis, gnawing at the edges of endurance, clouding judgment, narrowing focus until the desperate search for water overrides every other instinct. Even the simplest puddle becomes a battleground. The moment moisture pools under the searing sun, it calls out to every parched throat in earshot, broadcasting a siren song of salvation. Beetles, their shells coated in a fine dusting of salt, scuttle toward the promise of hydration, antennae quivering as they trace the faint scent of damp earth. Lizards, their tongues flicking nervously at the air, venture from the safety of crevices, gambling their lives for a precious sip. Birds, normally soaring high and detached from the desert's ruthless chess game, risk descending to earth, feathers ruffled against the heat as they lower their heads to drink. But these hopeful pilgrims are not alone. They are being watched, always watched, by the opportunists who have long since learned that water does not merely quench thirst, it concentrates prey. Around every scarce oasis, predators lurk like shadows stitched to the edges of the landscape. Foxes, normally subtle creatures of the twilight, crouch patiently among sparse rocks, their pale fur merging with the bleached salt crust. Jackals, emboldened by the certainty of easy ambushes, patrol the periphery of watering holes with relentless determination, eyes gleaming in anticipation of a slip, a stumble, a moment of fatal distraction. Even raptors, those sovereign hunters of the sky, adjust their deadly routines to the desert's cruel arithmetic. From the thermals high above, their vision sharpens as they track the migrations of desperate animals converging on evaporating pools. They descend in ghost-like silence, talons extended, as the desert below offers up another victim at the altar of survival. A lizard pausing too long to soak up moisture, a rodent daring to drink in the open. None escape the predatory calculus of the Danakil sky. What makes these watering sites truly sinister is not merely the presence of ambush predators, but the way the desert itself conspires against those who seek relief. Approaching water in Danakil is an act of physical endurance and tactical cunning. The ground surrounding these pools, often crusted with deceptive minerals, can collapse without warning, trapping smaller creatures in pockets of quicksand-like sludge or sharp salt ridges that shred vulnerable feet. The water itself, depending on its source, may carry hidden poisons, lethal cocktails of dissolved metals and acids that silently kill the unwary who drink too deeply. For the salt-flat beetles, water is both a goal and a labyrinth of hazards. These armored nomads have developed a peculiar relationship with condensation, often surviving not by drinking liquid water, but by harvesting microscopic droplets of moisture that collect on their shells during the rare cooler nights. Yet, when forced to seek out more substantial sources, they brave the gauntlet of predators and unstable ground, scuttling across landscapes where every surface might hide a waiting fang or claw. Reptiles, with their cold-blooded resilience, play an even riskier game. The blazing sun dehydrates them at a merciless pace, driving them to seek water with increasing desperation. Snakes, cryptic and patient, lie coiled in ambush along well-trodden paths to oases, their forked tongues tasting the desperation of prey carried on the wind. Venom is their weapon of choice, a swift biochemical strike that drops prey in its tracks before it can retreat to safety. In this harsh theater, A single lapse in vigilance can turn a simple sip into a final mistake. Even insects, the tireless survivors of Danakil's harsher hours, cannot escape the water trap. Drawn by instinct to the glimmer of wet surfaces, they become the easy targets of ambush spiders and predatory ants who patrol the damp fringes like miniature gladiators. The ants, fierce and highly organized, build subterranean lairs near reliable water sources, erupting en masse to overwhelm any creature foolish enough to wander too close. It is an orchestrated assault, an insect army exploiting the fundamental thirst shared by all life in this crucible of survival. The brutal paradox of water in Danakil is this: the closer one gets to it, the greater the risk becomes. It is as though the desert has weaponized its rarest treasure, laying traps disguised as salvation. Creatures must weigh their thirst against the ever-present danger of ambush, a delicate calculation that tilts fatally for those too slow, too desperate, or too naive to see the hidden perils. Here, water is not just a resource, it is the most ruthless predator of them all, seducing the parched with promises of life only to deliver them into the waiting jaws of death. Yet remarkably, life endures this deadly gambit. It endures not by conquering water's treachery, but by outsmarting it. Some species synchronize their activities to the rare seasonal rains, emerging in explosive abundance to breed and feed before vanishing once more into dormancy. Others learn to store water within their own bodies, hoarding every precious droplet as a buffer against the next punishing drought. Still others evolve behaviors of extraordinary ingenuity: nocturnal schedules, moisture-harvesting shells, metabolic slowdowns, all strategies honed to navigate the perilous dance with water's dual nature. As dawn breaks once more over the Danakil Desert, the deceptive calm of the oases is restored. Tracks in the dust tell the story of the night's battles. Predator and prey, victor and victim, all drawn together by the magnetic pull of water. The pools shimmer once more in the rising heat, innocent in appearance, yet still seething with the silent menace that defines this unforgiving land. In Danakil, thirst is not a weakness, it is a test. A trial by ordeal that spares no creature, no matter how cunning or swift. And in this savage examination, those who survive are not merely the strongest, but the wisest. Those who have learned that in Earth's deadliest corner, even water itself hunts the thirsty.